Some secrets live in plain sight. They walk through grocery stores, sit in church pews, smile in school photos. They exist behind closed doors in houses that look exactly like every other house on the block. For Marcus Jenkins, age 9, that secret walked beside him every single day, hidden under long sleeves in August heat, buried under rehearsed answers about how clumsy he was, how he fell down the stairs again, how he bruised so easily. The secret might have stayed hidden forever. Except on a Wednesday afternoon in Riverside, Georgia, Marcus decided he was thirsty enough to risk everything. And the man sitting 2 stools away at Earl's Gas and Grill happened to notice when the sleeve rode up, happened to recognize exactly what those marks meant, happened to be someone who'd spent 30 years learning that some things are worth fighting for. Before we go further, drop a comment about where you're watching from. Because what happened in Riverside could happen in your town. It probably is happening, behind doors that look normal, behind smiles that seem genuine. The question isn't whether these situations exist near you. The question is whether anyone's willing to see them. This is the story of a man who chose to look closer, and it started with a Wednesday afternoon that seemed perfectly ordinary until it wasn't. The town. That time-forgot Riverside, Georgia sits 43 miles south of Macon, the kind of town that barely registers on GPS. Population 6,200 give or take whoever left for Atlanta looking for opportunity and whoever came back when the city proved too expensive, too fast, too different from the slow pace they'd grown up with. It's farmland mostly. Pecan groves and soybean fields stretching to the horizon. The kind of place where your family's been working the same land for 4 generations, where Sunday dinner means your grandmother's kitchen table, where everybody knows everybody, which sounds comforting until you realize it also means everybody knows your business, or thinks they do. Earl's Gas and Grill occupies a corner lot where Highway 247 intersects with what locals call Main Street, though the official name is something else entirely. It's been there since 1968, a combination gas station and diner that serves the best sweet tea in 3 counties and burgers that'll make you forget whatever diet you promised yourself you'd start on Monday. The building is concrete block, painted white, though the paint's gone yellow-gray from decades of Georgia sun. Red Coca-Cola signs hang in the windows, vintage ones from the 70s that Earl's daddy put up and Earl never saw fit to replace. Inside, a dozen stools line a counter that's seen more conversations than a therapist's office. The grill sits right behind it, visible to everyone, so you can watch Earl or his daughter LaShonda cook your food. Trust matters in a small town. By 3 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon in August, Earl's is in its quiet period. The lunch rush is done. Dinner won't start for another 2 hours. It's mostly just regulars now. Old men drinking coffee they don't need. Teenagers who should be in summer school but aren't. Travelers passing through who stopped for gas and stayed for the smell of bacon that never quite leaves the air. James Ghost Patterson falls into none of those categories. At 54 years old, 6'2" and 220 pounds of muscle that's gone leaner with age but not weaker, Ghost doesn't fit easy categories. He's been a member of the Outcasts Motorcycle Club for 29 years. The patch on his leather cut says Road Captain, which means he leads rides, plans routes, keeps the chapter safe on the highway. But here in Riverside, where he stops every Wednesday on his way back from visiting his mother in Valdosta, Ghost is just James, the guy who tips 15% even on a $3 coffee, the one who helped Earl replace a transmission last winter. The man who sits at the counter, reads the paper, minds his business. Ghost had rules about these Wednesday stops, simple ones. Show up around 3, order the usual, coffee, black, and whatever pie LaShonda made that morning. Read the sports section, leave a 5 on the counter, be back on the road by 4. Don't get involved in other people's problems. He'd learned that lesson hard over 5 decades of living. The world had enough trouble without him adding to it. That particular Wednesday in August started like all the others, heat shimmering off the pavement outside, his Harley throwing a shadow across the parking lot, LaShonda waving through the window as he walked toward the door. Everything ordinary, everything safe, everything about to change. The wrong moment to be thirsty Ghost took his usual seat at the counter, second stool from the right, directly across from where LaShonda worked the grill. She had the coffee pot in her hand before he'd settled in, pouring that first cup that always tasted better than any coffee he made at home. "Pecan pie today," she said, not asking if he wanted it, just stating fact. After enough Wednesdays, some things don't need asking. That's when Ghost noticed the boy. 4 stools down, small for his age, sat a kid who couldn't have been more than 9 or 10. Marcus, though Ghost wouldn't learn the name until later. Black kid, skinny in a way that suggested missing meals, wearing a long-sleeved shirt buttoned to the wrists despite the thermometer outside reading 94 degrees. The wrongness of it hit Ghost immediately. August in Georgia. The kind of heat that makes breathing feel like work. And this kid was dressed for October, arms covered, shoulders hunched forward like he was trying to fold himself into a smaller space. Ghost had seen this before. Not exactly this, but close enough. 23 years working as road captain meant dealing with situations, domestic disputes, members who needed intervention, women and kids who needed protection from men who thought power came from fists. You learn to recognize the signs, the body language of someone who's learned to make themselves invisible. LaShonda approached the boy with a gentleness Ghost had seen her use with injured animals and lost tourists. She set a glass of water down without being asked. The boy wrapped both hands around it like it was the only solid thing in his world. "You want something to eat, baby?" LaShonda's voice carried that particular warmth, black women in the South perfect, the kind that can make you feel safe or ashamed depending on whether you deserve it. The boy shook his head, eyes fixed on the water glass. "When's the last time you ate?" Another shake. Quieter this time. LaShonda glanced at Ghost, just for a second. But that look said everything. This wasn't the first time she'd seen this kid come in asking for nothing but water. Wasn't the first time she'd worried. Ghost's pie arrived. Perfect like always. Warm pecans, buttery crust, the kind of dessert that made the trip from Valdosta worth it even without seeing his mama. He picked up his fork, then set it back down. The kid was staring at the menu board behind the counter, but his eyes weren't moving. He wasn't reading. He was just looking at something, anything, that wasn't the people around him. Too thin. That was the thing Ghost couldn't shake. The boy's wrists looked like you could snap them. His face had that hollow quality that comes from regular hunger, not occasional missed meals. Ghost pushed his plate down the counter, not making a big deal of it, just a casual slide until it stopped right in front of the boy. "You gonna let good pie go to waste?" The kid looked up, eyes wide. Dark brown eyes that had seen too much for 9 years old. There was calculation happening behind those eyes. A weighing of risks, a consideration of costs that no child should have to calculate over a slice of pie. "I can't pay for it," the boy whispered. "Didn't ask you to pay. Asked if you were going to waste it. Can't stand waste." The hesitation lasted maybe 5 seconds. Then small hands reached out, pulled the plate closer. The boy ate like someone who'd been trained not to draw attention. Quiet, controlled, but hungry. So hungry. "Thank you," he said after 3 bites. "No problem." There was a pause, the kind that happens when someone wants to say something but isn't sure they should. Then the boy spoke again, words coming fast like he needed to explain, to justify. "My foster dad says I eat too much, says that's why the checks don't stretch. But I try not to. I try to be small. I just get so hungry." The words hung between them. Ghost's coffee had gone lukewarm. The pecans on the remaining pie didn't look appetizing anymore. Foster dad. That explained some things, made others worse. Because foster parents are supposed to be vetted, approved, monitored. They're supposed to be the safe place kids land when their own families fail them. When they're not, when they're just another version of the same nightmare, the betrayal cuts deeper. Ghost was about to say something. He didn't know what exactly, just something to acknowledge what he'd heard, when the boy reached across the counter for the sugar dispenser. It happened fast. The sleeve rode up his forearm, just for 3 seconds, maybe 4, but that was enough. What gets seen can't be unseen. 29 years in the Outcasts, Ghost had seen violence in every form. Bar fights, turf disputes, the aftermath of domestic situations that ended with someone in the hospital. But this was different. This was systematic. This was a child who'd been hurt repeatedly, carefully, by someone who knew exactly how to inflict maximum pain. The bruises ran up the boy's forearm in a pattern Ghost recognized immediately. Belt marks, fresh ones, maybe 3 days old, dark purple against brown skin. Older ones underneath, yellow-green, healing but still visible. And at the wrist, small circular burns. 4 of them, cigarettes. Ghost knew what he was looking at because his stepfather had left similar marks. Different decade, different state, same story. Mac Patterson had married Ghost's mama when Ghost was 7 and spent the next 5 years teaching him that power meant fists and pain and silence. The memories came back sharp. His stepfather's hands, his stepfather's cigarettes, his stepfather's explanations about how this was discipline, how this was for his own good, how if he told anyone he'd get worse. The boy realized what happened. His eyes went wide with pure animal panic. He yanked his sleeve down so fast he knocked over the water glass, both hands covering his forearm like he could undo what had been seen. "Please don't tell him you saw." The words came out trembling. "Please. He said if anyone sees, if anyone knows, he'll know I showed them on purpose. He'll say I'm trying to get him in trouble. The boy stopped himself, but Ghost understood exactly what would happen. LaShonda was there instantly, her hand on the boy's shoulder. "Baby, when's the last time someone hurt you?" The boy just shook his head, tears starting now, shoulders shaking. Ghost kept his voice steady. Calm. The way you talk to anyone who's scared enough to run. "What's your name?" "Marcus?" "Marcus, who's doing this to you?" "I can't. He'll know. He always knows. Your foster dad?" A nod. So small Ghost almost missed it. "What's his name?" The boy looked toward the door like he was calculating if he could make it out before someone stopped him. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. "Deacon Wilkes." LaShonda's hand tightened on Marcus's shoulder. Ghost watched her face shift from concern to something harder. She knew that name. So did Ghost. Deacon Wilkes worked for County Social Services. He was the foster care coordinator, the man who placed kids in homes, the man who was supposed to protect them. The irony was so bitter Ghost could taste it. The phone tree Ghost sat at that counter facing a choice he'd hoped never to face. He could call the police, dial 911, report what he'd seen, let the system handle it the way the system is supposed to handle these things. But Deacon Wilkes worked for the system. He knew how it operated. He knew exactly which boxes to check, which words to say, which people to call. And in a town like Riverside, where everybody knew everybody, connections mattered more than evidence. Ghost had seen how that story ended. When he was 12, a teacher noticed the burns, called Child Protective Services. A social worker showed up, asked questions, wrote notes. Mac had been charm itself, explained about the boy's clumsiness, his tendency to lie for attention, how hard they were trying with limited resources. The social worker left satisfied. That night, Ghost learned what happened to boys who made their stepfathers look bad. Option 2 was older, messier. The kind of justice that doesn't wait for courtrooms. Ghost pulled out his phone. The call connected on the second ring. "Yeah." The voice on the other end belonged to Marcus Preacher Cole, president of the Outcasts Riverside chapter. At 61, Preacher had been leading men for longer than some members had been alive. "We got a situation," Ghost said, watching Marcus through the corner of his eye. "Child abuse, needs immediate attention." No pause, no moment of consideration. Just one question. How bad? Ghost closed his eyes, seeing those marks again. Bad enough. Kids 9. Multiple marks, different stages of healing, cigarette burns. Scared to go home. Perpetrator is county foster care coordinator. "I'm activating the tree," Preacher said. "Code red. Where do you need us?" "Earl's Gas and Grill on 247. 30 minutes. The line went dead. Code red. The club had codes for different situations. Red meant child protection. It meant drop everything and respond. It meant that for the next however long it took, their singular purpose was making sure a child stayed safe. Miles away across Riverside and the surrounding county, phones started ringing. Preacher called 3 members. Each of them called 3 more. Within 7 minutes, 18 men knew that Code Red was active and where they needed to be. David Tiny Freeman was under the hood of his tow truck when his phone buzzed. At 6'4" and 280, all of it muscle from 20 years pulling cars out of ditches, Tiny had hands like hammers, but a voice gentle enough to calm down anyone whose vehicle had just died on the highway. He read the message, wiped his hands, told his dispatcher he was taking emergency leave, and headed for his Harley. Marcus "Doc" Williams was already closing up his veterinary clinic when the call came. 58 years old, former Army medic, Doc still carried his training like instinct. Code red meant someone was hurt. He locked the clinic doors and fired up his bike. Leonard Cage Martinez was in his garage building furniture when his phone lit up. At 46, Cage was younger than most of the chapter, but his story ran deeper. He'd grown up in the foster system, bounced between 11 homes before aging out at 18. He knew what it meant to be powerless. When the message said foster care situation, Cage didn't hesitate. One by one, across the county, engines roared to life. 18 men, different ages, different backgrounds, different reasons for joining the club, but united by one unbreakable code: protect the vulnerable, no matter the cost. Thunder on Highway 247. The sound reached Earls before the sight did. A low rumble, distant at first, then growing steadily louder. The kind of sound that makes conversations stop mid-sentence. 18 motorcycles moving in formation down Highway 247. Not racing, not showing off. Just rolling with purpose through the Georgia heat. They pulled into Earl's parking lot, one after another, choreographed through years of riding together. 18 men in leather cuts, the outcasts' MC patches visible on their backs. They killed their engines in near unison, and the sudden silence felt almost as loud as the rumble had been. Inside Earl's, the handful of customers had gone quiet, everyone watching through the windows as the bikers dismounted. LaShonda stood behind the counter, one hand still on Marcus's shoulder. She'd kept the boy there, kept him fed, kept him safe, given him more pie, more water, told him stories about her grandbabies while they waited. She hadn't called anyone, not the police, not social services. She'd trusted that Ghost knew what he was doing. Now, 18 men were walking through her door. Ghost entered first, and Preacher came right behind him. At 61, Preacher moved with the careful deliberation of a man who'd learned that leadership meant staying calm when everyone else wanted to panic. His salt and pepper beard was trimmed neat, his eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses that made him look more like a librarian than a biker, until you noticed the way other men deferred to his presence. Ghost crouched down beside Marcus, bringing himself to eye level. "Marcus, this is Preacher. He's the president of my chapter. That means he's the boss of all these guys." Preacher pulled up a stool, sitting so he wasn't towering over the boy. His voice was surprisingly gentle. "Hello, son. Ghost told me you might need some help." Marcus looked at Ghost, then at Preacher, then at the wall of leather-clad men filling Earl's. His small voice barely carried. "There's so many." "That's right," Ghost said, "because we want to make sure you're safe, really safe. Not just for today, but from now on." Preacher leaned forward slightly. "Here's what's going to happen. We're going to go talk to Deacon Wilkes, have a serious conversation about how he's been treating you. You're going to stay here with LaShonda where it's safe until we make sure everything is handled. Does that sound okay?" Marcus's hands were shaking. "He's going to be so mad when he finds out people know. He's not going to do anything," Ghost interrupted, his voice firm but not harsh. "Because he's not going to get near you. That's why there's 18 of us and one of him." The boy processed this, trying to understand how protection could be real. Then he asked the question that cut through everything. "Are you going to hurt him like he hurts me?" The question hung in the air. Every man in that room understood what was being asked. This child who'd been brutalized was trying to understand if help and harm were just two versions of the same thing. Ghost took a breath. "No, we're not going to hurt him like he hurts you. We're going to make sure he never hurts anyone again. There's a difference. What he did to you, that's about power and control. What we're going to do is about protection, about drawing a line and saying this far and no further." Marcus searched Ghost's face. Whatever he saw there must have been enough. "Okay," Preacher stood, placing a hand briefly on the boy's shoulder. "You're safe now. That's a promise." LaShonda moved closer, reclaiming her protective position. "I'll keep him right here. Y'all do what needs doing." Ghost stood, his knees protesting slightly. 54 wasn't young anymore. He looked at his brothers, these men who'd dropped everything on a Wednesday afternoon because a child needed help. The engines would start again soon, but this time they wouldn't be coming to offer help. They'd be delivering a message that Deacon Wilkes desperately needed to hear. The house on Sycamore Lane. Deacon Wilkes lived at 823 Sycamore Lane, a ranch-style house painted pale yellow with white trim. The lawn was manicured, the flower beds maintained. An American flag hung from a pole in the front yard, the kind of house that screamed respectability, stability, the exact qualities you'd want from someone charged with protecting vulnerable children. Abuse hides behind well-maintained facades. The motorcycles came down Sycamore Lane in formation, and the sound shattered the afternoon quiet. Curtains twitched in windows up and down the street. A woman watering her garden stopped mid-spray, watching as 18 bikers took position around 823. They formed a perimeter. Tiny positioned his bike blocking the driveway. Doc and Cage took positions on either side of the house. The rest spread out, creating a wall that said louder than words, "This house is surrounded." Ghost and Preacher walked up the concrete path to the front door. Their boots were heavy on the steps. Preacher knocked, 3 solid raps, not aggressive but firm, the kind of knock that says we're not going away. The door opened. Deacon Wilkes was 42, average height, with the kind of build that suggested someone who'd played football in high school but hadn't maintained it. He wore khakis and a button-down shirt, the uniform of county employees everywhere. Clean-cut, well-groomed, professional. He looked like 1,000 other men in 1,000 other small towns. That was the problem. His eyes took in the 2 men on his porch, then tracked past them to the motorcycles, to the wall of leather-clad men who'd made his home the center of their attention. For just a fraction of a second, something flashed across his face. Fear, recognition that something had gone very wrong. But Deacon Wilkes hadn't maintained his position for 8 years by being careless. The fear disappeared, replaced by professional courtesy tinged with confusion. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Preacher's voice carried absolute authority. "We need to talk about Marcus Jenkins." 4 words, simple, direct, loaded with meaning. Deacon's expression didn't change, but Ghost saw the way his hand tightened on the doorframe, the micro-calculation happening behind those professional eyes. "Marcus?" Deacon's voice stayed level, concerned. "Is he all right? Where is he?" Ghost spoke for the first time. "He's safe. That's all you need to know." The word safe hung between them like an accusation. Deacon's jaw tightened slightly. "Look, I don't know what Marcus told you, but that boy has a history of making up stories. He's been through 4 placements in 2 years. The previous families all said the same thing. He's troubled, he acts out, he fabricates incidents for attention. I'm doing my best with limited resources, but—" "We saw the bruises," Ghost interrupted. "All of them. The belt marks, the cigarette burns." Deacon's mask cracked. Just for a second. His face went through rapid changes, surprise, calculation, anger, then back to professional concern. "Those were accidents. Marcus is clumsy, and he gets into things he shouldn't." "Cigarette burns aren't accidents," Preacher said flatly. 4 of them, different stages of healing. That's systematic." Deacon shifted tactics. His voice took on a wounded quality. "I smoke, yes. Sometimes the boy doesn't listen. He reaches for things, knocks them over. I've told him 100 times to be more careful, but you know how kids are?" The door opened wider from behind him. A woman appeared, thin, mid-30s, with exhaustion written in every line of her face. Deacon's wife, Sarah. She looked at the bikers, then at her husband, and something in her expression suggested she'd been waiting for this moment for a long time. "Sarah, go back inside," Deacon snapped. She didn't move. Instead, she spoke directly to Ghost and Preacher, her voice shaking but determined. "There are 3 other children in this house right now, all foster placements. If you're here about Marcus, you need to check on them too." Deacon's head snapped toward her. "You have no idea what you're doing. Do you understand what you're—" "I understand exactly what I'm doing," Sarah interrupted. "I'm done pretending I don't see it. I'm done being scared. These children deserve better." Something in Deacon broke. The professional mask didn't just crack, it shattered, his face contorted with rage. "You stupid woman. After everything I've done for you, everything I've given you." He reached for her. The threat was immediate, automatic. Ghost moved between them, placing his body as a barrier. He didn't touch Deacon, didn't lay a hand on him, just stood there, immovable. "That's done," Ghost said quietly. Preacher already had his phone out. "Yeah, we need police and child protective services at 8 on 23 Sycamore Lane. Multiple child victims, adult witness ready to testify. Suspect is on scene and should be considered dangerous." The words landed like hammer blows. Victims, witness, suspect. Deacon's face cycled through emotions, rage to disbelief to something approaching panic. He was cornered, and every exit had closed. Sirens sounded in the distance, growing louder. Sarah sagged against the doorframe, tears running down her face. But there was relief there, too. The terrible relief of someone who'd been carrying an unbearable weight, finally being allowed to set it down. When the system finally works, Sheriff Patricia Thornton arrived within 8 minutes. At 49, she'd been sheriff for 6 years, and before that, 20 years as a detective in Atlanta. She'd seen enough to recognize a situation when she walked into one. She took in the scene with sharp eyes. 18 bikers forming a protective perimeter, Deacon Wilkes cornered on his own porch, his wife standing separate from him, her body language screaming victim. "Somebody want to explain?" Doc stepped forward. "Former Army medic, ma'am. I documented injuries on a 9-year-old boy approximately 2 hours ago. Multiple contusions in various stages of healing, 4 circular burns consistent with cigarette contact, defensive injuries on the forearms. Mrs. Wilkes just informed us there are 3 additional children inside who may need medical attention." Thornton's expression went from professional to granite hard. She'd dealt with Deacon Wilkes professionally for years, foster care coordinator, county employee, respected member of the community. "Sarah," Thornton said gently, "are there children inside who need help?" Sarah nodded. 3 of them, ages 6, 7, and 11. "I can show you the bruises. I can show you everything. I should have called you months ago. I was scared, but I can't. I won't." Her voice broke. An ambulance arrived, then another patrol car. Then a social worker Thornton called personally, someone from the state office rather than county. The 3 children were brought out one at a time, each one showing signs of systematic abuse. The 6-year-old girl had bruises shaped like adult fingers around her upper arm. The 7-year-old boy flinched when Thornton moved too quickly near him. The 11-year-old girl wouldn't speak, just stared at the ground with the practiced blankness of someone who'd learned that. Showing emotion made things worse. Doc examined all 3 with his medical training, documenting everything while Thornton's deputy took photographs. Red Cross referenced injury patterns. Cage talked quietly with the 11-year-old, his own foster care history giving him credibility that no one else could offer. Sarah gave her statement sitting in the patrol car, finally telling everything she'd witnessed over the past year. The escalation from verbal abuse to physical punishment to systematic brutality. The way Deacon had convinced her that this was discipline, that these troubled children needed firm hands, that if she reported him, she'd lose everything, her home, her reputation, possibly face charges herself for failing to report. The fear that kept her silent, the relief of finally speaking. Deacon Wilkes was arrested on scene. Multiple counts of child abuse, 4 victims, 18 witnesses, Sarah's testimony, medical documentation, photographs. His professional mask was gone completely now. He stood in handcuffs, his face a mixture of rage and disbelief, as if he couldn't comprehend how this was happening to him, how his carefully maintained reputation had crumbled in less than an hour. The children were taken to the hospital. All 4 of them. Marcus would be brought there from Earls to join them. They'd be examined, documented, cared for by people whose job it was to actually care. Ghost stood in Deacon's yard, watching it all unfold. Preacher beside him. 18 brothers who'd dropped everything on a Wednesday afternoon because a child reached for sugar at a diner counter and his sleeve rode up. Sometimes the system works, but only when enough people refuse to let it fail. 3 months later. The trial lasted 6 days. The evidence was overwhelming. Medical documentation, photographs, testimony from Sarah, who'd found the courage to speak, statements from neighbors who'd heard shouting, who'd seen things but hadn't known what to do, child psychologists explaining trauma indicators, Ghost sat in the gallery every day, front row, a silent reminder that these children still had protectors. Marcus never had to testify. The judge ruled the physical evidence sufficient. That decision alone felt like mercy. The verdict came back after 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. 23 to 27 years. Deacon Wilkes would be 69 before he saw freedom again. 6 months after that Wednesday in August, Ghost pulled his Harley into Earl's parking lot. Same time, same day. LaShonda waved through the window. He took his usual seat at the counter. 2 stools down, Marcus Jenkins climbed onto a stool, his feet reaching the footrest now. He'd grown, gained weight. The hollowness was gone from his face. He lived with a new foster family now. Real ones this time, vetted by state investigators who'd turned Riverside County's foster system inside out. A couple named Thompson, who had 3 grown, kids of their own, and room in their hearts for one more. Marcus ordered eggs and toast, didn't hesitate, just ordered what he wanted because wanting things was allowed now. Ghost ordered as usual, coffee and pie. This time he finished both. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the afternoon sunlight slant through Earl's windows. Outside, Georgia continued its ordinary rhythms. Inside, 2 people who'd learned that ordinary could feel like a gift. LaShonda set down Ghost's check, smiled at Marcus, ruffled his hair gently as she passed. Ghost left a 5 on the counter. Marcus left $1 from his allowance, proud to contribute. They walked out together into the August heat. Ghost's Harley sat in the parking lot, chrome gleaming. "Can you teach me to ride someday?" Marcus asked. Ghost looked down at him, saw a kid who'd survived, who'd found the courage to accept help when it was offered, who'd grown strong enough to want things again. "Maybe when you're 16, if your foster parents say okay, not a day before." Marcus's face lit up like Christmas morning. Sometimes protection looks like 18 motorcycles surrounding a house. Sometimes it looks like sitting beside someone at a diner counter and refusing to pretend you don't see what's right in front of you. Sometimes it's as simple as noticing when a sleeve rides up and choosing not to look away. If this story moved you, drop a comment below. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, because the Marcus Jenkins of the world are everywhere, waiting for someone to notice, waiting for someone to care enough to do something about it. Subscribe for more stories that prove humanity isn't lost. It's just waiting for the right moment to show up.